Good afternoon, Saturday afternoon to everybody. For those of you
I'm
that's
ready.
watching, for those of you watching us live, thank you for coming. If you're watching this on the replay crew, I love you guys too. Very important to have both the live and the replay crew. So before we get into today's guest, I just want to make sure we remember today, this month, is also Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This is the domestic violence hotline. If you know somebody who is being a victim of domestic violence, or this is unfortunately yourself found in this position, please copy down this number. Please give them a call and see if you can get some help for yourself or another person. Okay, people aren't going to get out of these situations themselves. They need help. So, the Domestic Violence Awareness Month. So, just a couple of program notes. We're going to be running this on YouTube and also from Kick. I got a great following on both, so I want to welcome the Kick people that just showed up. I'm going to try to run both through in there. So, without any further ado, our next guest, Dr. Kimberlie Massnick. She is an associate professor, or soon-to-be associate professor, right? You're an assistant professor right now?
I am an assistant professor at the moment.
Indian State River Indian River State College. Yep,
yes.
College in Fort Pierce, Florida. Yeah, that's a mouthful there. So
I know.
I met the good doctor. I think it might have been one of the crime cons that you were a guest speaker at, and we got to talking, and then you helped me out with the cold case handbook. So
no, sir. I had to introduce you on stage, and I said, "How do you say your last name?" And you just said, "Wing it." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Very good, very good. So, Kimberlie, thanks for joining me. I know you're busy. I know you said you were doing haunted house stuff today.
Yes, we are actually. That's how we raise money for the Cold Case Institute, as well as the students for scholarships to continue their CJ education.
Very good, right? So when you come up to New York, I'll give you a Metro card. You could go to the Bronx for $2.90, and you can get your own horror show. So
I need an escort, so you're going with me.
All right. So you have done something at the college that I wish other colleges across the country would look at. And that was why I was glad I was finally able to nail you down to come on the show and be able to explain to people what the Cold Case Institute does at Indian River State College.
Right. What we have done that is completely different is that we incorporated it into our exit class. So you have to be a senior. It's the last class you leave. And I put it in the methods of research class because, as former law enforcement, that to study a case, you're absolutely doing research on every single aspect of that, the victimology, the whole criminal justice part of it. So I did a proposal that I wanted to open up a cold case institute and combine it with that methods of research class. And the thing that makes it special is, one, it was approved, and two, we work hand in hand with the law enforcement agencies that have the jurisdiction over those cases. So whatever you see, we see. And you're in the classroom, so I teach, you teach, and we solve things together.
Yeah, so this is why I really want to get down into what you do with the police departments, with the students, because that is what separates your institute from anything else that I've seen so far in the country, and it's needed. I mean, before we get there, though, just tell us a little bit of what it took to get this thing off the ground.
It took people, even people that I know in academia, and then since I teach criminal justice, I have lots of friends and resources in the world of law enforcement. They know I'm a little crazy. They know I like to push the boundaries, and I don't settle for status quo. It even took my friends. I don't think they believed that we could do this. So the biggest hurdle was getting somebody to agree to be the first person to try it with us. And I had to be a little strategic in how I approached that. And once I got the first agency on board, and it started to make some headway and some news, now they're all driving me crazy, and they all want on board.
Great. Now, is it a non-for-profit organization that you had to create at the college?
Somebody like you. I did. I had to actually rewrite my actual academic class. so that the assignments were not based strictly on textbook material. They were actually based on, yes, what we had to learn as far as research, but the sources were the case. So, and it could be anything because we start at the very, very beginning, and a lot of agencies aren't digitized. And these cases could be decades and decades old. Here in Florida, we have issues like floods, hurricanes, things like that. So, with those cases not being digitized, those cases are now missing. Nobody will ever be able to do anything with them because the boxes are gone. So that we start with digitizing, and if the agency isn't up to par on that speed, they don't have the money, the time, the effort. My students learn how to do all of that and give it back to them in a form that they can keep forever and don't have to worry about losing it again.
Yeah, that's awesome too. I'm going to swing back to that one, but so let's
Okay.
explain to the audience. So if there's another college, another student, another professor out there
Mhm.
watching this up, so we know that you created this organization and you got this
Mhm.
thing going. How difficult was it to get the police departments on board to be able to participate in this?
The first one, like I said, was a little tough just because everybody looked at me and said, "Oh, she's a teacher. What is she going to do?" But I actually went outside of the teacher realm and tried to become as much like a law enforcement person as I could. I became a public defense investigator. So I started, really being in the jail and speaking with the criminals. I started working as a victim's advocate. I took all of those pieces so that I could have a little bit of knowledge to be able to put the pieces together and know what we're reading. So it gave me a little more credibility to come and talk to a law enforcement agency and say, hey, I'm not just some teacher who wants to play in the sandbox. I can do this. And that was probably the toughest part. So I had to expand my education and my hands-on experience.
Right. So now you have these. So you get these cases now. So you have how many police departments do you have involved now? In and around the area, so to speak. We don't have to name departments, but we could just. How many do you think?
Um, I have roughly about 16. I only work with the 4 counties that my college specifically has face-to-face campuses on. So, but yeah, so there's more than a dozen there. But right now, I'm currently in a holding pattern with one agency waiting for FBI evidence to come back from testing, while I'm currently working 5 cases with another agency, and they're hot. That their cases are hot. So
Very cool.
yeah.
So tell us how this works. So you get a case from the police department, right? So
Mhm.
what's the next step? Does each student in the class get a copy of the case, or is it one case file? How does that work?
Nope. I actually treat them as if they were the patrol officer that gets that 911 call, and there's something, a disturbance, a reason that that person is needed to show up at a location. So I may only give them a name, a date, or a county. Sometimes, depending on the class, I may give them the very first newspaper article, so they have nothing, and then they have to work it as if they're a true detective. And I will not give them the case because I don't want them to repeat the patterns and try and prove what the agency tried to do before. So they got to start from scratch.
Excellent. Yeah, I call that tunnel vision. So when we were
Yeah.
running our cold case squad up in the Bronx, it was the same thing. Because what happens is you go down the same path that the other
Yep.
investigator did, and if he or she made a mistake, so will you. So that is absolutely fantastic. I love it.
Yeah.
So they go through. So they're going to start doing everything. So they go through like the morgue files and they go through all the different things. Do they go out and do any interviews? Do they do
They
anything like
have
that?
to they have to earn those documents, Joe. They have to have come across something and ask me for the ME reports. I don't just hand them to them. So they have had to have gone down a path and go, ooh, this is important. I probably need to look at what's the cause and manner of death. So, and then my groups, I break them down. They don't get to pick their own groups, so they're not hanging out with their friends. I want them to realize that in the real world, you don't get to necessarily pick your team, so you may not get along. but also to realize what your strength and weakness is so that you learn to rely on somebody else to maybe be the IT person where maybe you're really good at getting your hands dirty. So they do that. They do a lot of work on the computer, and then as they start to develop their pattern, then they will ask me for did they ever talk to this individual? Did they talk to that individual? And then I'll say, "But yes, actually they did." And then I will hand over the reports. Then they go through them. They look for what they might consider a discrepancy or a question that might not have been asked or somebody that wasn't talked to. And then we start to build, they build their timeline, but then we also build the things that we want you to go back and do. We want testing on this because they didn't have DNA back then. We want to, oh, wow, we don't have the reports for the bullets, all of those things. So we do it from scratch.
Yeah, this is great. Now, just to interject something, when police departments tell me that they can't recruit people, and I say, we have organizations like this where they're actually learning how to do police work. Why aren't you being more active in the colleges where most places require college credits? Anyway, it's beyond me. I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So this has actually led to, let's see, I opened up the agency in 2018, and I will tell you that we've been very successful. So more agencies are listening and wanting to get on board, but it's also led to several agencies opening up their own cold case, like a legitimate unit that's a cold case unit now, where they didn't have that before. We're very fortunate in our state that there's a lot of funding for new research, DNA, things like that. So it's giving them a reason to look at those cold cases. And then it's also led to people paying more attention to wanting to close some of these cases. And because some of them aren't that difficult to close, it's just a matter of look at technology, how it's changed in the last 20, 30, 40 years. So
yeah, no, it's an actually exciting time with all the different laboratories and everything else that's going
mhm.
on. But you know what? For people like yourself that are taking these students into the whole process, because
Mhm.
eventually, hopefully, these students become tomorrow's police leaders and detectives and investigators, and they remember this and they understand the consequences of these cases and the family members that have been waiting for, some answers for for years and decades sometimes. So, I mean, this
Right.
is something when I was writing the book, I said I got to reach out to Kim because it's got to be included because I'm trying to, myself and others like yourself, we're trying to change people's
Hmm.
mindsets within the police department, especially the executives, because they're the ones that have to
Right.
ultimately make
Right.
these decisions. So, how
Right.
many students in a class, per semester, so to speak?
Yeah. I have had, because it's such an in-depth course and I don't want it to be like herding cats. They're just all over the place. I am super hands-on, and then I have a chief or the detectives or whatever here. I was limiting it to 15 people per class. And then I don't like to have any more than 5 at the most on a case. So, but now I'm up to 20, and that's probably the max I want to push
Right.
it, because then it gets watered down and there's not enough of me, there's not enough of a detective to be able to guide them when they go down a path that I may not want them to go.
So the detectives, if I remember correctly, they actually come to the classes and they
Mhm.
answer questions. Tell everybody how that works because this is an unbelievable perk
Yeah,
about
well,
running this cold case
and I'll
institute.
tell you what, since I spoke with you, we have actually, one of the things we've done is we've opened up a new program here at the college, a crime scene program. And so it's an associate level course because most of our agencies are going to civilian crime scene investigators now. So the gentleman that we hired for that happens to be the crime scene investigator on 3 of the 5 cases I'm looking at now. So, which is awesome because I bring him into the classroom. So there may not be something I can answer, but I just grab the dude who was there back then and he can answer the question. Sometimes I have the detectives, I can get them to come in even though they may be retired and talk about the case that they saw then, and you'll get to hear their thoughts, their process. I need my students to learn from their experience, but I also need those more seasoned officers that are not so thrilled on just getting on a computer and doing something, to listen and see the value that these kids can have and the time they can cut down instead of running place to place to see somebody or find something.
So I have
So
a question here from Todd about you guys help these kids eventually get into law enforcement kind of thing and look for some of these local jobs?
yes, and I'll tell you what, my favorite part of the whole program, aside from hopefully resolving a case for the family, is that it's a 4-month job interview, and we're in the process of allowing them to take this class twice. So whatever agency is here, they are looking at the students with a fine-tooth comb, trying to see if they have the attitude that'll fit with their agency and if they have the skills. But on the reverse side, my students are also able to look at the agency to see if they want to be part of the culture of that agency. So the agency that I'm hardcore working with now has hired in multiple positions, I think 4 students in the last year.
That's great.
Yeah.
So how does the interactions work? So when the kids have the I call them kids, I don't know how old they are, but
I know.
I
I
guess
call
they're
them
all
all my
kids to me.
kids.
Yeah, they're kids to me. Anyway, once you get to a certain age, everybody's a kid.
Yeah.
So how does the interactions go with the kids? So they doing their own work, they're doing their own investigation, and then the investigator or detective comes in, and then what do they just bounce questions off them?
Well, what we do is every week we do basically like you would have when you went to work, is we do a mini debrief on where they left off the week before. And I do not allow anything to leave this room. I have my own computers. They don't get to take anything except for I can't take what's in their head out. So they go home and they work, and they may have spoken to each other during the week, and they debrief us on what's new and what they're going to do that day. And we guide them in that. But then we float around table to table constantly and make sure that what they're saying makes sense, that they don't always think of all the places that you can find that information is public, because maybe they're not old enough, they've just started, this will be their first election to vote, or they haven't bought a home before, or they don't know about tax records and all of that. So yeah, we float and teach them all those other little places to get through.
Great. So for those of you that are just joining in, the numbers just swelled into the room. We have Dr. Kimberlie Massnick here from Indian River State College in Florida. She runs the Cold Case Institute there. If you want to learn more about the doctor, her information and links are in the notes, and a couple of the mods, and I know Jay and a couple of new ones I've been adding. I've been putting out her information on the chat, so if you want to know more about her. And this is just for the students at the college, correct? This is not like outside people coming in and helping things. It's like a course that they have to take.
It is absolutely a course, but I also have the nonprofit branch of this that I do myself. So I can take anything, and with that, I do use volunteers that are professionals. I'll tell you what, there is nobody better at research. If you need cases to solve, you call those librarians that are like 90, they can find anything. So
Yeah, and they're actually looking for work, right? They're
yeah,
just sitting around waiting.
yeah, so it's funny, and being in Florida, there are so many people that are retired that are law enforcement from up north, or they're nurses or doctors, so they can read the ME reports. So I technically have a little pool of experts that I can sit down and we can just push through it together. So I'm going to actually try and crowdsource my first one. I'm a little nervous about that. So if you got any hints on that, if you've done that yet, Joe, that'd be helpful.
No, well, explain to me exactly what you want to do with that.
Well, there are certain cases, like I have a passion case I've been working on. The suspect in at least 34 cases was convicted of 2, and I will die until I get I won't die until I get every one of those question marks off there. So I did part of my podcast on him, but we have connected him to some other people. But the rest of them need to be done as well. So whether I have to podcast it or YouTube it or come and talk to people like you and have your people help, because
Yeah,
they were all over, this guy was all over the country, and even in one other country, I'm pretty sure he murdered somebody as well. So I can't do it all by myself, and I'm not stubborn or arrogant enough to think I can. So
All right. Well, we'll talk offline about that, but it's always great to be looking for companion cases because
mhm.
each one of them holds a clue to the one that you're looking into, and
That's
it's an
exactly what
important.
happened with the 5 that I'm working now. It wasn't until the students started looking at it and realized that the same name was coming up in multiple files. So just not a nice guy. That's all I can say about that one right now. Not a nice
Yeah,
guy.
we won't give out any clues about that one, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind of interesting. So the detectives that are working these cases and they come to the school and how long do they come? Once a week, twice a week? How long are
They
they
come
there for?
once they come once a week. Standard college classes are usually, an hour and 15 minutes twice a week or online, whatever. This course, I actually combined it and made it once a week for 3 hours. I have my office is within the suite. They have their own criminal justice room. So I have students that come in 2 hours early, they start working, then the detectives or whomever is coming in that day shows up, and then I'm very fortunate that most of the time the professionals will stay. And sometimes I have the students in here for hours. The first case they solved because I drank more coffee going to coffee shops on the weekend. I think I've been at every coffee shop within the 4 counties. But that's how they solved that case. They were going to dig in and they weren't going home until it was done. And it worked. So,
So let's talk about. I mean, we could talk about this. I know you've had a couple successes.
mhm.
Let's talk about the very first one you had. Let's talk about it, and then how did the students feel, and how did you feel? So that's three questions in one. So let's start with the
Sure.
case that you guys solved.
Let's go with me. The competitive teacher part in me went, ha ha, told you we could do it. That was my first attitude. And then the pride I had in seeing how happy they were to be able to go back to a family and say, yes, it's been 40 years, but we have answers for you now. But then it was for all of us a very sad thing because we ended up finding for all these years this family, and it's a solved and it's one you can look up. This family has thought that their son was murdered, and he wasn't. He actually, and I don't know that this is better, but he actually killed himself, and we were able to find documentation that just one hand never got it to the other hand for other reasons, and then put a bunch of other pieces together. And so the very first case we solved ended up being a suicide uh, by fire. And, that's not, typically your body doesn't allow you to do that to yourself. So we didn't even go and announce it until for 6 months almost until we could track down family and make sure that they were ready for that. And if they said, being the victimology part of me, if they said they didn't want it out there, then we wouldn't have gone public. We would have just closed it and put it away.
Right. That's awesome, and a couple of fronts because not only are you helping the students learn how to do investigations and the importance of cold cases, working with family members, but also about the advocacy part of it, and that's really important. It's
Correct.
not about exploitation. Exploitation is not advocacy, and this is something that
Right.
we want to avoid, like the plague.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
I'll
well,
tell
listen.
you that that's going to be a big one for me. If the two of the cases that of the ones that we're working on now, we are hoping to be able to close with by well, now it's almost November, in the next couple of months, if the testing and things come back. But this gentleman is connected to at least 3 cases. Well, you know what that is. I'm going to have the first students that they're going to be able to say they closed a case with a serial killer. It's going to be really hard because you want to scream that from the rooftops. You want that on your resume at the very top, but that's not what it's about. So you kind of have to tamp them down a little bit, even myself, because you have to remember that, wow, this is just one bad guy, but forget him. How many people did he affect? So it's kind of weird to be excited, but controlled at the same time.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, if you guys solve this case, I don't see why not taking a victory lap, especially the students. I mean, this is come on. I mean, we have a huge cold case homicide problem. Forget about the
Mhm.
missing persons cases. Forget about the cold sexual assault. I mean, when you add all three, I call them the cold case trilogy. When you add them all
Yeah,
together, we have a mass
huge.
national casualty disaster on our hands here, and it doesn't get enough attention.
No, and I think one of the things that one of the students brought up, and I just looked at them like they were a little crazy at first, and I'm like, "You're absolutely right. We have sexual offender databases. There's a state, I think it's Utah, has a fraud database. Where's the database for individuals that have just murdered people? Is it because it's so huge? Is it because we can't prove it, so we can't say it? I mean." I don't know. I don't know. But you're right. The numbers are huge if you put them actually all together and look at it.
Right. So there's another question from Todd. He says, "Do the students go out with the cops? Do they do anything like that, or
Yes. You would be. It was really funny. On the first case that we solved, we went out to the crime scene because we wanted to see if what we thought had happened, how this gentleman took his own life, if it actually lined up with where all the evidence was, if it made sense. So tiny little town, still dirt roads, whatever. But you would be amazed at how this one little woman had to walk out of her house can by can to the recycling bin. So because it was overwhelming. So, we kind of freaked out a neighborhood, but we do go out. We have been on certain cases been allowed to maybe sit in a back room if they're going to discuss and re-interview somebody. We're never allowed to go participate in that, at least not to this point. Mainly that's whether law enforcement permits it or not. I have nixed it because we're working, again, you have to remember, in the 4 counties where these students live. And I don't want them to walk into a grocery store or something and run across a family member that they just talked to. So until they put on a badge or some kind of uniform, I don't put them in that position.
great? So yeah, you're getting some fans here. Janet just subscribed to your podcast. So there
Oh,
you go.
geez,
We're
that
starting
means
to
I
spread.
better get busy.
Yep. You're gonna have to get busy. You're gonna have to get back on and making content and getting these cases out there because
Yeah.
one thing about so a buddy of mine, Jay, who's in the chat room now, he has his own show, The Shaming of Jay, and he's been real nice to me. And he has this thing called the J Bo Nation, and everybody's kind of like climbed on board with me. And
Nice.
what a group of people, though. So I mean, wait, you're going to see the outpouring of support from this
When you
group like
wrote
you've
that
never
book,
seen before.
when you wrote your book, your Ellie book, and you included us in that section, I can tell you the people that reached out and just said, thank you. It's nice to hear that our kids are actually learning something in school. I can now see what they're studying and the reason why. So I really am thankful and grateful to you for that, because I was able to read that to them and show them that what they're doing does matter. So
That's awesome. I didn't anticipate that, but I think that's great.
I did, yeah, I
Listen,
didn't either. So
this is a great program. That's why I included it in the book, and that's why I wanted to talk to you. So, Manny's got a great question. Do you have a particular person who's your mentor or inspiration?
Uh, actually, normally, and I still will say this, my direct supervisor here, my department chair, because he's been military, he's been Secret Service to 2 or 3 presidents. He then went on to do law enforcement, and he's had my back with every out of the box idea I've ever had. So he's probably my true mentor and hero. But my childhood mentor, and it's kind of sad to say, I finally got to meet and talk to John Walsh, because he lives in the county next to us. I finally got to talk to him 2 weeks ago, and potentially, hopefully, we'll get to do some stuff together. So he's wanting to
Awesome.
only work in the 4 counties now too.
So I got a question coming on kick from Debbie's here. She says, are there other disciplines at the university or the college that use for their areas of specialty? So you have other kind of programs like this at the college?
Oh, absolutely. This is probably the most outside of the box one, but most of them, like we have an amazing nursing program. So they've got all the medical programs we have, they've got students in hospitals and here, there, they're doing all kinds of stuff. Um, we are getting a body farm. Potentially, I
Oh,
think they're
really?
going to break ground in a year and a half. That was my dream job, but I can't do everything. But that is going to take several different programs to make that work. And that's going to allow a lot of students to get their hands on and actually learn what I call service learning, meaning you're touching and you're learning by doing. So yeah,
Well,
we're pretty cool about that.
yeah, that's actually kind of some new news there that I didn't know about. For those that may not know, uh, what is a body farm?
It's exactly that. It is a big piece of land that people can donate their bodies to. And this is how officers, detectives, whoever are working cases of people that have died, whether it be in a normal manner or a suspicious manner, the bodies are laid out there. And this is how we study the decomposition. We know that if this bug is there at a certain amount of time, the person's been gone, they passed in the last so many hours. Here in Florida, it's completely different than the weather in Texas or the weather. I think we have five, I think, Joe,
Yeah,
of
there's
these in
one
the
in
country.
Tennessee.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know
Tennessee. I
there's one
mean,
in Tennessee.
yeah, I'd love to be going up and taking some classes up there. But there's a difference in the way people decompose, just even from place to place. So we put them in clothes, no clothes. Here in Florida, we have a lot of water. So we have bodies in water. We have the exact same scene right outside of the water. And so it's a tool to help law enforcement be able to gauge what might have happened and how long it might have happened.
Here's a great question from Keystone Pirate, who's aging himself. Says, with the out of school civilians who you work with, any tips for those people who are picking up on local cases that have been forgotten about? What kind of
Uh,
suggestions?
I'll tell you what, I'm not the only, person that is doing this. Joe and I both know some people. Actually, you're actually looking at some cold new cases that are actually old and cold. Um, but there are plenty of cold case institutes or agencies that you can reach out to and send them packets. I have people that send me packets all the time. And if I don't feel comfortable or qualified, I will at least send that to somebody that is in that jurisdiction that I think might be able to help them. So if you don't have something local, then actually I would turn around because one of my agencies actually takes civilians and uses volunteers. So call your local agency and say, hey, what about this case? Is anybody working on it? Do you take volunteers? So if you want to get your hands dirty yourself, all you got to do is ask. The worst they can say is no.
Right. Yeah. So Shannon here says she's applied for having her body go to Tennessee. They call me every day. They want to know if I'm done with mine yet.
Yeah. I did tell the person who runs the foundation here is when you're calling and asking for them to leave us money in their will, could you please ask them to just leave the body too? So
Yeah. Donate to science fiction for some of us.
yeah.
So so and it's just not the students doing the cases, whatever. You provide other services for police departments, like scanning these documents of these cases and bringing them up to the 21st century, right?
Correct. I created, like a lot of agencies, especially military, they have the challenge coins. So what I did is I created what looks like a challenge coin, but it's actually a USB. And some of these cases, they're film. It's not been developed. So they're looking at, just the film. Well, I turned around and I got the equipment to be able to put that on the computer, and then I transfer it over, organize it, and put it in folders on those disk drives, which have our name on the front, and then they have our information on the back. Twofold. One, that case will always be safe. Okay, it gets uploaded into their system. We give it to them in a format that they can use. And then I'm always out to make sure my students are always remembered to be looked at later. So that's why the front of it is our logo, and then the back has our email on it. So we'll take anything. And these kids, Joe, are so young. Like they're like, "What's a boom box?" I'm like, oh. So I've been able to clean out my entire house. There, I've got the VHS things here. I've got this. They're like, "What is that?" I'm like, okay, I can't beat them. But
Yeah,
so
no, right?
they've had to learn some history too, because if you're going to work in the field, then you got to know it as well.
So yeah, Debbie's got a good follow-up question here. Like, for instance, do you guys analyze the phone records in any of these cases if they're in the case file?
And if they're not in the case file, we request them. There's one of the cases we worked on now that it says they were requested back then. Whether they're misplaced, lost, or they were never sent, I can't, I can only speculate to that. But we have re-requested those. But most of our files will have some of that. And yes, that's where the computer and the younger people that now can just get in there. Everything is online. You can find it. So they will start looking up numbers and they'll be like, oh, that belongs to so-and-so. Even if it's under a weird name, they'll find it on their Facebook, or as I've been told, only old people use Facebook. They'll find it on Snapchat or TikTok or whatever. So like, thanks guys. But
well, I ask my students that all the time, like what they use, because they don't read newspapers, they don't watch the news. Like, where do you get your information from?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't get it from Facebook anymore because grandma's on it, so it's not cool anymore.
I know.
So they,
Joe, I have a TikTok. How do I have a TikTok? Because they took one day they picked up my phone and went, "Hey, Dr. M," and they did this to open it. They used my face to open my phone. They made me a TikTok account. I'm like, what are you guys doing? They're like, you got to get with it. This is where the action is. I'm like, oh, okay. So
yeah, TikTok, Snapchat, they tell me. Instagram, they still use the Instagram. And so I try to,
it's about to be old.
yeah. On the one of the law nerd Amber on Kick, she says, "What's a boombox?" Oh my God, we're getting old. Yes, we are. Next we'll be talking about rotary phones.
I found a functioning phone in a phone booth with the phone book while I was on vacation in New York. I stopped. I made my friend pull over so we could take the picture, and they were like, "What is that?" I'm like, "It's called a phone booth." And they're like, "No." And I said, "Yeah, we also used to have to put dimes in the mall bathroom to be able to open the door." They're like, "What?" I'm like, "Okay, guys, just forget about it, but go on."
So for those of you that just joining us, Dr. Kimberlie Massnick, Cold Case Institute from Indian River State College in Florida. You guys make sure you like, subscribe, hit that like button. It helps out a lot. We're approaching 2,000 hours already in about 6 weeks. So I want to thank you guys for, we're really starting to cook with gas over here. So Todd's got a follow-up question. I know you have an eye. Was it the Internet Movie Database? I saw a couple of things on there. Is there any other true crime shows they can see you on?
Todd, I'm starting to feel like I dropped you in here as a ringer for me.
he gets the extra 20 at the end of the show.
Yeah, you pass. Yes, I've actually done, I think, 12 or 15 episodes of different shows for Oxygen where I do, I'm actually what you call a forensic criminologist. So it kind of blends the world of my psychology background with crime. So I do a lot of analyzing of both the victims and the suspects, but I did, I don't want to mention the shows on here for you, but if you reach out to me, I'll tell you. And then I have a new show. I've crossed over. ID Discovery is new for me. So I'm coming out on there the week of Thanksgiving. So I enjoy that because it lets me kind of be the class clown and calm, but then I can still be serious when I have to be serious. But this isn't always fun what we get into. So
no, but like my students get a kick out of it when they see me on television, and then they get
you're on the wall in my classroom.
Well, you throw darts at it.
Yeah, no.
Scare the mice away.
You're on the wall.
I'm on the wall.
Yep.
All right, so So we scan these documents in for the police departments, and can any police department do this, or just those ones that you're working through? Let's say, the police department that you're not currently working in, if they need help, would you help them out if you can?
I would, yeah, no, I would, even if couldn't help them student wise. I have students that have graduated that work with me on the outside, the private side of my institute. And yeah, we absolutely, there's one word I still haven't figured out how to say, and that's no. So yeah, no, if somebody needs help, we'll absolutely help. So,
Okay,
and
I got
sometimes
another great question.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I have another great question from Shanlo Bo on Kick. Is there any case that keeps you up at night? Is there anything that that kind of case that? Because we all have that one case.
We all have. I kind of have two. I have one that is what I said is my passion case that I've been working it for 20 some years, and that is if you check him out, he's my very first one on my podcast. But it's John Gerard Schaefer. He was a Martin County deputy, which is in one of my 4 counties. He actually lived 2 houses down from mine. That is a very, very disturbing individual, but nobody knows about him, which freaks me out because Ted Bundy actually said that this guy was his hero. That tells you how bad he is. So that case bothers me. And I've met a lot of the family members who think that their family was a victim of his. And so that's my one. And then my other one that actually was tangible that I dealt with the serial killer was Bobby Joe Long. I communicated with him for years, and then he invited me to his execution. And I said I would, you'll get this, Joe. I said I would never let them in my head. I would never let them win. But he's executed, and he never did answer all my questions. And then he was such a jerk. He mailed a letter the day he had already written it so that I would get it after his execution, and said some things. And he said some not nice things like, well, for a doctor, you should be smarter. And, he threw down. So that case actually that was the first case that actually bothered me. So, but that's taught me a lot of lessons on how to take care of myself, and I don't do things by myself. I have a support network now. So just those two probably.
Yeah. So the first one you said is on the podcast. So if people want to learn about that one, is the second one on your podcast too?
Yeah, Bobby's on there as well. Yeah. I did him probably the year we met at CrimeCon. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for those of you that want to learn more about those cases, check out the podcast, download those episodes. Maybe you can help out the good doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Get a little closure. I always say investigators need closure too. It's important because these cases stick with you. I'm retired 12 years. I still carry cases and faces and people with you. Sounds, smells, you name it.
Yep.
So, that's just the way it goes. So what other services or what other issues that you help with the police departments? We got the cases. We got the kids looking at the cases. We have the transposing of documents. What are some of the other things that you do?
Some of the things we do that are outside, so to speak, of the cold case thing, they call us because of it. But academically, we also have those students that they're getting their academic degree, and then they're going to finish by going into the police academy. So either we'll send those students or mine. And we do a lot of grid searches. We do a lot of, we had a hurricane. This was in the last 10 years. But the police had searched this area, but had been given misinformation as to where this individual might be. And then the students weren't out there but 20 minutes, and they actually found the body. So we do a lot of stuff like that when given the opportunity and when we feel we have people that can handle it. So.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it's not for everybody.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I do not, and I'm careful how I say it. My students laugh. I do not like cases that deal with children or animals. That's just not me. I can't do it. So I'll end up in Rikers. So
don't worry about it. They're letting everybody out now, so you'll be out there. Great politicians today. Well, that's another show. Yeah. Before I lose my mind. Oh boy. So So we talked about the one success about finding the change in
Mhm.
the manner of death. We went from
Yes.
like a homicide or an undetermined to
Mhm.
suicide. So we
Yep.
closed that case. It's off the book. So that's a home run. That's an important thing. And
Absolutely.
what else you got working on? I remember when I spoke to you, they had some case going on with possible DNA. Did that come back yet, or is that still pending?
We do have that particular case that I spoke with you about. The DNA has come back. It is who we thought it was. The gentleman is not in state, and the detectives are in the discussion of who's going to go down and interview them. You know how that process works better than I do. I don't have the patience. I don't. I'm ready to go down and propose to this person and bring him back to my state. However, I got to get him back here. But something I was told that's kind of interfering with the case, and I'm going to end up in Rikers. So I guess I will not be doing that.
Well, after
Um,
all the work you did, no, we don't want to see that happen.
yeah, I'm like, so yeah, so I keep a very close eye on that individual. But then we also have, we are sending off DNA on two more cases this week. One will go FBI because it's never been touched by anybody before, and that's the only way FBI will take it. The other one is going to come back to, actually, we're going to send it to Othram, and then we'll see what happens there. And we did close, with exception, two cases since I talked to you. So family
Okay.
was not happy with the results, but it is what it is. But they did not want to go public. It's a political thing, so they will sit on the shelf. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, they're done. They're closed.
Right. So for those of you that don't know what exceptional clearance is, it comes from a variety of reasons, including that the suspect's dead, suspect's in another place without extradition, or that's basically the only things that the FBI kind of allows for their recommendation. The case counts as closed once that exceptional clearance goes in, and but yes, the family's generally not happy about it,
Right.
but it closes. That happens a lot of cases, especially in serial killing cases, when you find cases years later and the suspect is dead, and then all of a
Yes.
sudden you find five or six other cases. They get closed. Exceptional
Yeah.
means for that.
Yeah.
So, what kind of future plans do you have for the Cold Case Institute? What would you like to see it expand within the college, or do you have any other plans about going to? I know you mentioned Othram. Tell us a little bit
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah, I actually would like them to meet more professionals and bring in other people so they can understand when the students are giving those recommendations of, I would like you to look at this or test that, or even just why is it so difficult and take so long to get phone records. I would like to bring in some of those individuals so that the students can understand the process and figure out how they can work around it, maybe quicker, better, faster. So that's one thing. I have been asked by a couple of other colleges to, how did I do this? And I actually did it by writing an endowed teaching grant here at the school. And that's mainly, it just meant that they were going to give me a small stipend of money to do something special for a couple of years. And so I'm trying to show other schools. And I've actually shared my endowed proposal because it's very detailed. Because I think, honestly, we're not in it for the ego. I will go to any college that calls me, and if I can get there, I will help them set this up and teach them how to wheel and deal with the agencies to get them on board. I think it should be in
Yeah,
everything.
that's my goal, right? So that's why I wanted to
Yeah,
include it in the book, because I felt that the book was going to uh, do well, and it has, and it's
good,
catch on. And I get a lot of messages from people,
good.
and a lot of things about the cold case institutes. Now, there's different varieties. I found
Mhm.
other things like other police departments only use retired law enforcement,
Yes.
but yours is unique, right? So for those
Mhm.
that just joining us now, we're talking about a cold case institute where students are taking a college course, getting introduced to law enforcement. The cops are coming to the classrooms, answering questions about the case. They're doing their own research. There's nothing else like this that I know of currently
Yeah.
going on in the United States, and I wish every college would do it, including my own. Right? So it's like
You
everything
know,
else. You have to move mountains.
well, it's teaching, Joe. My students aren't all 18, 19-year olds. I have people that are coming back for second careers. I have people that are retired law enforcement, but they just want the degree. So I have a huge level of experience. So they're not all kids that are working on this. And that's what people need to understand. With this diverse background, you really need that. different set of eyes, different thoughts.
Right? Just like what aspiring court writers, fresh set of eyes. Yep, that's what it takes. I tell
Absolutely.
my students all the time. When you write something, right, you give it to somebody else because they see your mistakes. The same thing happens in investigations. Someone had asked earlier, about what are some of the common errors that you've seen in some of the cold cases that you've looked through.
I'll give you this, and then Joe, then you can answer it. Excuse me, on a professional level, because at first I was livid until the chief sat me down and explained why these cases were cold. Because I was finding, I probably out of my first 5 cases, I want to say 3 or 4 of them stopped and started, they just went cold because, well, so and so didn't follow up. I was finding evidence that we sent to a lab 40 years ago and it's still sitting on the shelf not being tested, or some, the results weren't here. And then he explained to me how you guys get moved and promoted and a case goes to this one and that one. And so all of a sudden I didn't think, holy smoke, we have this huge no follow through, and they explained it. So I think for the people that actually want to understand why cases are cold, for me, Joe, that's an important thing, because even I didn't understand.
Yeah, it's an institutional problem for sure on many levels, and that's one of. But it's not an excuse, right? Because you can make policies and procedures to prevent that from happening. Promotions don't happen in a vacuum; they happen over a long period of time. People are going to get promoted. Whoever's in charge of that unit has to have a contingency plan to do it. That has to be done. I addressed that when we spoke about it. I addressed that in the book, because if not, you end up with this, constant cases just getting shuffled and lost between the cracks. The number one thing that I tell people who are listening, because I see a couple people said, Dixie on Kick says, I think I found my third career. Yeah, this is a great opportunity for people to get involved and try to help out in some of these things. But my number one suggestion is to everybody who's going to do this is you take nothing for granted. Oh, they must have submitted a DNA. Oh, they must have looked at the fingerprints. Oh, they must have followed up on the report. No, no, and no. You take nothing for granted. You have to follow up everything. You have to make sure that the I's were dotted and T's are crossed, because stuff happens in police departments that is out of their control.
Right.
So, it's just something that you can do that. Some things can be avoided. Listen, we know human errors play a big role in these cases. We know the transfers and the promotions play a big role. So there are lots of different reasons. If anybody wants to know like a whole complete list, we could always send me a DM and I'll give you a whole bunch of them. But I don't want to.
Well, and then you're dealing with so many different agencies that, I mean, most of you guys at your police agency is not the one that is testing the evidence, especially if it's DNA. And then you're trusting your evidence to somebody else. That's why the FBI doesn't touch anything that another agency has already tested. And then it gets sent here, and then you've got stuff over there, and then you've requested records from here. It's people don't get how many cogs are in the wheel of one case. And so that's why I put 5, and I choose my students very well on who's very detail oriented, that's going to stay on top of that, and who's going to be who's the one that's got the cojones to call and go, look, I asked for this, where is it? Because you can't be a pansy. You can't. So,
well, there's different skill sets for this for sure. So Mandy says, retrain your brain not to trust someone else's work. Yeah, and it's difficult for the police department, because a lot of times the cops will get pushed back and say, what do you think I did something wrong? Yeah. And then that becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Have you run into that at all when you try to reach out to old detectives and stuff on the case?
Well, actually, yes. And once, just the other day, and then my biggest one, I've had a father of a victim who's here local, call, and his son was definitely foul played. It has been listed that way. It is listed as a homicide, and that father has gone on TV on the anniversary day every year and cried for somebody to help him solve it. So finally, somehow they got my information, and he called, and I said, let me look at it. And that agency they have done everything they can to avoid me, not talk to me. They talk to all the family, don't talk to me. I mean, it's like I've been blackballed. And I'm not out here to call out any mistakes. Let me help you. I'm just free labor. That's what I am.
Yeah.
So,
well,
yeah,
I understand. Listen, when I was actually doing this, when you were reaching out to people that worked for the same agency that you do, you'd get pushback. So it's just one of those things.
That's what I was told. This agency that's given me a really hard time, I've heard they don't play well in the sandbox, their own sandbox. So I'm like,
Right.
but I'm not going to stop because the family called me. And when that dad cried, when he cried to me, I finally went, okay, I'll just do it on my own without the help of whomever. I'll just start from scratch. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, no, and people, sometimes some executives think it's about, we're going to be embarrassed because I look at it this way: if you don't provide the help, you're going to end up doing this on your own anyway, and
Right.
then God help them if you do come through with a breakthrough. Talk
Yeah.
about embarrassment. Well, not you were warned, you were asked for, if we could
Yeah.
help out, and you didn't do it. So, I got 2 words for them, and not happy birthday. But that's just it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, listen. Talk about the guy that used to call up people and ask them for stuff. You don't want me calling you up when you're
Yeah.
supposed to give me something. Yeah, that's not going to work. But so what other? So we were talking about future plans, and we kind of got a little bit sidetracked. So talk about this Othram, like how you going about with some of these cases.
Well, the agency that we're working with now on the 5 different cases, they still have, and I know the number to some people is going to sound low, to other people it's going to sound high, but they still have just under 40 cases that I haven't even touched yet. So, Othram is a genealogical DNA facility and agency, and this law enforcement agency that I'm working with is giving them a shot for the first time. They're going to try some genealogical research, and they chose Othram, and we're giving them 2 cases this week. So if it's this gentleman that I think it is, then he's going to be in trouble because his DNA is in the system, and I have faith in a couple of these big genealogical guys. So
No, I do. So how does it go with the funding to do this? Is it that you guys try to do some of this crowdfunding, or did they giving
actually,
you?
we were going to do that, but the state of Florida FDLE just came through, and I think the agency that I'm working with just got a huge, like $1.52 million grant from them specifically for this. So
Oh,
right now
awesome.
in the state of Florida, wherever it came from, I have no idea how it got there, but I'm thankful. There is a
Yep.
huge chunk of money set aside for this. All you got to
Yeah,
do is
and sometimes
apply.
you don't ask questions. Yeah, don't
Nope,
ask questions.
don't care. Just
So
somebody write the check to
that's
them
a
and we're
home
happy.
run.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a home run. And I talk about how many cases you can get, because Othram is in the news every day. I interviewed
Yeah.
them for the book too.
Yeah.
Dave, the CEO, and
Mhm.
so I included them because I knew this was going to be huge, and every day they're in the news doing
Yes.
something.
Yeah, they actually, the passion case that I talk about with John Gerard, they actually ID'd a Jane Doe body from that time frame. And that sheriff's agency called me to see if I could match that name up with the book that this killer wrote. So, so it's kind of interesting to be called for something like that, you know?
Yep, absolutely. So here, Dizzy's got a great question. A lot of work on your plate. Do you have any hobbies outside of school and helping playing Wonder Woman out there?
Yeah, actually, I will tell you the TV part of me, I consider a hobby. I consider it fun because I get to go and meet people and talk to people and say things that I can't say in front of other people because they'll have me committed. Um, I, I'm doing. I told Joe right before here. I tried to like clean my hair up a little bit,
Yeah, me
but
too.
for me, I'm doing a haunted house, like the biggest, craziest, creepiest haunted house for the next 2 weeks to raise money for my Cold Case Institute and my students. That to me is fun. So, yes, I guess it's work because I get accused of that all the time. But yeah, everything comes back to work. I'm even working on a fiction book and it comes back to what we do. So,
So Mandy comes out and says, "What about using a cold case lab like Othram for current cases? And any plans like that in the future
uh,
at the
yep,
college?"
yep. Well, I'm not sure If the college will be the one responsible right now, we're fortunate the agencies are, but Othram will take 2 cases this week from us of the 5 that we're working on. So yeah. So again,
That's
like I
great.
said, I realize that it is many cogs in the wheel to make this close, and I'm just one piece of it, but I will look for all the others. So
Now, is there a forensic science department at the college, or is it all kind of lumped into like criminal justice?
it actually was all criminal justice. We have an amazing police academy, so lots of really big, cool toys and things to train, and lots of stuff like that. But our department here is growing, and it's partially with creating new programs like this and giving new opportunities. One of my coworkers does a lot of federal stuff, and I don't know, they were talking about the other day about throwing cadavers in the backyard, and I'm like, and you think I'm the crazy person? I'm like, what? So we have police forces coming from, and this is still a little weird for me, coming from other countries to be trained by us on how to deal with certain things. So yeah, we're growing. We're growing. So
That's great. I can't believe the hour went by that quickly.
I
So for
know.
those police executives out there watching, and college professors and college deans and everybody else, wherever you want to call them, wherever you are, if you're looking to do something not only to help your students land careers, but to help out the public, the families. I mean, everybody's always looking for that way to build bridges.
Hmm.
This is it. Check out Dr. Massnick, what she's doing in Indian River State College in Florida. Reach out to her. Her information is in the description. Just do it. I mean, because what are we waiting for? Time's flying by, and these
Yep.
cases are, and we're getting more. We're up to about 9,800 a year now that are going
Yeah.
cold. So
Yeah.
at that rate, it's just unmanageable. It's already unmanageable, and it's just
Right.
something that is just something that has to be done.
Mhm.
So, Doctor, thanks for coming on today. It was a lot of fun. It went by really quick.
Yep.
So for those of you that just please on your way out the door, just like and share and check out the doctor's podcast. Her information is out there. This Tuesday, I have Police Commissioner Rodney Harrison from Suffolk County Police Department. It's going to be here talking about Gilgo and the investigations, so you don't want to miss that. So just hang on one second, Doc. Guys, thank you very much. Kick people. Thank you too, Jay and everybody, J-Bo Nation. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend, guys.